You might think that the Identify spell tells you everything about a magic item in Dungeons & Dragons, but it doesn't. What it does is strip away the mystery and the history of every item upon which it's cast. My name is Timothy, though some people do call me Tim, and I'm a professional dungeon master running over 300 games of Dungeons & Dragons a year. And today I'm going to help you to fix Identify so that we're no longer stripping our magic items of all of the interesting bits. As written, the rules for identifying magic items in 5th edition are pretty straightforward. If you spend a short rest studying an item, or you cast the Identify spell upon an item, then you pretty much know everything that you need to know about how to activate the magic item and all of the powers that are contained inside of it. And that sucks. There is a caveat in the DMG as a variant that allows you to change this. It states that you can remove the ability to identify the properties of a magic item during a short rest and require the Identify spell, experimentation, or both to reveal what a magic item does. This obviously allows you to put the mystery back in if you're adopting this variant, but what it doesn't do is give you any idea on how to do the things that they're talking about doing. Removing it is simple, and requiring Identify doesn't really do much to change the situation as writ, except require somebody to have the spell and a 100 gold piece pearl. But removing both options or requiring experimentation has no details for how we can go about this. So let's dive into some details, and we're going to start with the assumption that we are throwing out the short rest option, and we'll go from there. Gone are the days where players sent their characters pouring through ancient libraries, consulting sages, or even rolling history checks. So how can we keep them guessing, and more importantly, keep them intrigued without ending up with a bunch of magic items becoming the stuffing that players use in their bedrolls at night? We'll talk about how to turn library trips into quest opportunities in a little bit, but for now, I'm going to outline a number of different options that we can steal from 2nd or 3rd edition as possibilities, as well as a couple of other more off-the-wall options. First up, from both 2nd and 3rd edition, we can make the pearl that is a requirement of the casting of Identify an expended component instead of just a material component that is not consumed. By putting even the small 100 gold piece cost on an Identify spell, what we're essentially doing is making it a spell that is optional to use as a way to get the information without having to go through the steps, but it does cost some small minor resource. At low levels, that resource is going to feel like an awful lot, and in some campaigns that feeling could last quite a while. At high levels, when you have lots of monetary resources available, then Identify becomes a trivial thing. Both 2nd and 3rd edition also gave less specific answers to an item's capabilities or the charges that it held. In 3rd edition, the spell specifically gave only the most basic function, meaning that if you found a +1 sword that could also do other cool things, you had to figure out how to do the other cool things another way, because Identify was only telling you that it was a +1 sword. Switching Identify in this way means that our characters are going to get some basic information and know how they can engage with the item, but they will always be wondering if there might be more that could be discovered if they were to play around with the item or perhaps go and do a little bit of research. 2nd edition had a couple of other changes. For instance, the possibility that you would get a false reading from a magic item. The possibility that you could be being fed information that was not correct is one way to add that fear of uncertainty back into an item, and hopefully, if you have telegraphed well enough and provided opportunities in your games for your players to go and learn information in other ways, then that little bit of fear will lead to perhaps identifying the item, getting an idea of what it can do, and then going and corroborating or looking into any strange dissonance between what actually happens and what you were told could happen. 2nd edition also gave casters of the Identify spell a fairly substantial penalty to their statistics, meaning that the Identify spell was typically something either you asked an NPC to cast for you, or you cast during some form of downtime instead of on the moment or at a short rest. Another option is to get rid of Identify entirely and make our characters rely upon gathering information from other sources. Hint and tell them where they can find more information to get the crunchy mechanical goodies, because you do need your players to know that information. One option is we could give a chance of success based upon the spell slot that was used to cast the spell. This would mean that higher level characters had a better chance of successfully identifying a magic item, whereas lower level characters would not be so easily successful. Again, this gives us that range that we can be looking for as we grow from low to high level and gain more along the way. Another possibility for adjusting Identify is to swap it as far as level is concerned with the spell Legend Lore. If you swap both the level and the spell components that are required, this is an easy means of making lore readily available to your characters. Legend Lore only gives out what the DM is willing to give out and wants to give out, and when it comes to magic items, that can mean that you can give out a lot of the information. If you're going to make Legend Lore a functional option for this, then remember that Legend Lore only works for things that are legendary, which means that all magic items should probably fall under this category. If they're the leavings of an ancient civilization, then they probably do, even if they're just an uncommon or common magic item. As I've mentioned earlier, if magic items are going to be legendary options, but we're not going to just spoon feed our characters the information about what's involved in them, then they need some other places to go and get the information. I know this is a little bit of a shocker, but what we're going to have to do is drive them to engage with the world. Not every character is going to be excited about a trip to the local library, but you don't have to restrict information about these legendary items to moldering old books. Some other great options for allowing players to go and gather information could be talking to local storytellers or wise women, visiting the religious institution of their choice, asking a few of these questions of the local fence for the black market for these kinds of items, or visiting some sort of archaeological society. Each and every one of these potential places to gather information could lead to social checks or intellectual ones in order to gain the knowledge that the characters are looking for. Alternatively, as we mentioned earlier, it could lead to quests. This could be as simple as quests for the library of choice in order to get temporary access at low levels, or perform more deadly and dangerous quests to get permanent access to the restricted lore that is hidden away from the general public. It could be that the local area where the players start asking isn't enough to get all the information, but could provide a lead to someone or somewhere where the information could be gathered. Or there could be a quest that provides bonuses to the checks that you're going to make when you go to the library to pick up information. It's better that you're using bonuses versus the advantage mechanic in this situation, because you want to encourage players to work together and utilize the help action by giving bonuses as a result of specific quests that have been performed. Then you gradually make it more and more possible for your players to gather the information that you want. Setting a simple set of DCs based on how rare you think the information is, using 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, can mean that it will eventually become trivial to learn at least some information about an item. But don't be afraid to hide some information behind an active check at an appropriate location. By putting it at a specific location, even if your characters become absolutely the best kind of investigator or studier that is possible to be, they're not going to instantaneously gather the knowledge unless they engage with your world. Changing Identify so that the lore comes first and the mechanics come second puts the wonder and mystery back into magic items in Dungeons & Dragons, but not if you don't have any lore or mystery to provide to your players. Check out my video on how to add lore to your magic items and my magic item enhancement tool to put it into practice. Thanks for watching and happy adventuring.